In the dust-choked hush of the frontier, a man knelt beside his dying friend and made a vow that would alter his life forever. She wasn't the woman he'd pictured, poor, scarred, and carrying battles invisible to the eye, but she was braver than any gunslinger he had ever known. This is a tale of a promise kept, and the love that rose from it. The wind swept low across the prairie, bringing with it the bitter tang of gunpowder and rain. Jacob Mercer had been riding hard for nearly 2 hours, chasing the echo of distant gunfire, clinging to the hope that he wasn't too late. When he reached the narrow canyon, the fight was already over. His lifelong friend, Caleb Turner, lay slumped against a rock, breathing in short, ragged bursts. "Jake!" Caleb's voice was faint, but his eyes still carried that restless fire, the same one that had gotten them both into trouble since boyhood. Jacob dropped to his knees, pressing a hand against the bleeding wound. "Hold on. I'll get you to a doctor." Caleb shook his head weakly. "No, not this time. Listen to me. I need you to swear something." Jacob's throat tightened. "Anything." "There's a girl. Her name's Anna. Been living alone since the fever took her kin. I told her I'd marry her. Didn't want her ending up with some man who'd crush her spirit. You're the only one I trust." Jacob's mind reeled. "Promise me," Caleb whispered. "Take care of her. Even if she don't want you to at first, she's been hurt enough." And then Caleb was gone. 3 weeks later, Jacob rode into the small, weather-beaten settlement of Pine Hollow. Folks there didn't smile much, and they spoke only when needed. When he finally found her, she was nothing like he'd imagined. Anna stood behind a wooden stall at the edge of town, selling jars of preserves. Her dress was patched, her hair pulled into a loose braid, and across the right side of her face was a faint but unmistakable burn scar. Her eyes locked on his, sharp and guarded. "Can I help you, mister?" Jacob removed his hat. "Name's Jacob Mercer. I knew Caleb Turner." The color drained from her face. "His." Jacob nodded slowly. "He's gone. But before he died, he asked me to marry you." For a long moment, she just stared at him. Then she laughed. Not the light, easy kind, but the kind born from someone who had learned to armor their heart. "You think I'm going to marry some stranger because a dying man said so," she said flatly. "I don't need anyone." "I made him a promise," Jacob replied, his voice firm, "and I keep my word." She crossed her arms. "Well, I didn't make one." The weeks that followed were among the hardest of Jacob's life. He stayed in town, mending fences, hauling water for widows, and quietly stepping in whenever trouble came Anna's way. Once, when a ranch hand mocked her scar in the saloon, Jacob's fist connected with a man's jaw before words could. Anna hadn't thanked him, but she hadn't walked away either. It was during a pounding rainstorm that things began to shift. Anna's roof gave in under the weight of water, and Jacob arrived in time to help her save her few possessions. As they worked side by side, she finally spoke, softly, almost to herself. "That fire, it wasn't an accident. Some men wanted my father's land. Caleb was the only one who ever stood up for me." Jacob met her gaze. "Then he was right to want you protected." Months passed. Jacob never once pushed her to accept him, but he never left either. Slowly, Anna began to trust him. She noticed how he never flinched at her scar, how he listened when she spoke, and how he stood between her and the rest of the world without asking for anything in return. One autumn evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in gold, Anna walked up to him on the porch of the cabin he'd been repairing. "I've been thinking," she said quietly, "about your promise about Caleb." Jacob waited. "You kept it," she continued, "even when I made it near impossible." "It wasn't just about the promise anymore," Jacob admitted. "It's about you." Her eyes softened. For the first time, she smiled, not the guarded smile of survival, but the warm, genuine smile of someone lowering their defenses. "If you still want to," she whispered, "I'll be your wife." The wedding was small, just a few townsfolk, the wind, and the wide blue sky. Jacob knew Caleb was watching somehow, and that he'd kept his word, not out of duty anymore, but out of love. Anna was still poor, still scarred, but to Jacob, she was the bravest soul he'd ever known. The first winter after the wedding came early to Pine Hollow. Snow smothered the fields, and the cutting wind made every outdoor chore twice as hard. But inside their little cabin, there was warmth, not just from the fire, but from the quiet companionship they'd built. Still, old wounds don't fade overnight. Anna carried shadows Jacob couldn't see, and some nights he'd find her sitting by the window, staring into the dark as if listening for footsteps that never came. One night, as the fire snapped low, Jacob asked gently, "What is it you're looking for out there?" Her voice was steady, but her hands shook slightly. "The men who set the fire that took my family. They're still out there, Jacob. Somewhere." Jacob didn't press her. He knew some things required time. But deep inside, he made a silent promise. If they came for her again, they'd face him first. By spring, the land had begun to thaw, and with it, so had Anna. She laughed more now, sometimes even sang while tending the garden behind the cabin. She'd learned to trust Jacob's steady presence, but the scars in her heart ran deep. Then, one sweltering afternoon, trouble rode into town. 3 men, strangers to most, but not to Anna, dismounted outside the saloon. The instant she saw them, the blood drained from her face. Jacob caught it. "You know them." Her voice was barely a whisper. "They're the ones from that night." Jacob didn't hesitate. He stepped into the saloon, the scent of whiskey and sweat thick in the air. The men were laughing over a card game, but when they spotted him, the room fell silent. "You boys got business in Pine Hollow?" Jacob asked evenly. The tallest one smiled thinly. "Just visiting. Heard there's a pretty little widow out here."